Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another lore compilation we have compiled. Just to be fair, this is only a smidgen of the lore that we will cover on Count Dooku in the near future. Count Dooku is honestly one of the most compelling, emotionally toying, and greatest characters in all of Star Wars. And due to his nature as a Jedi, and later tenure as a Sith Lord, Darth Tyrannus under Darth Sidious, he truly is one of the greatest characters in all of Star Wars lore. I hope you enjoy the lore compilation. I would suggest putting it on while you're doing some other menial tasks, such as writing a book, completing work, cooking, exercise, or whatever have you. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Thank you all so much for all the support and love I've been getting on my YouTube channels. And be sure to check out my Lord of the Rings channel, the one channel to rule them all. Goodbye, my friends, and I'll see you.
Yes, I've grown from a man to a god.
How powerful was Count Dooku's Force Lightning? Force Lightning has cemented itself as the most famous, powerful, and tyrannical dark side ability, at least in some form, in the entirety of Star Wars, widely considered to be the most powerful Force ability in all of fiction for that matter. Force Lightning has cemented its place as one of the most powerful forms of attack in all of fiction. Count Dooku was a noble practitioner of Force Lightning, implementing it in Attack of the Clones and throughout the Clone Wars conflict against both Yoda, Obi-Wan, Anakin, clone troopers, and multiple other battalions of enemies. So this begs the question, how powerful was Count Dooku's own, unstoppable, nigh unopposed Force Lightning, and how does it compare to other Force users? It was powerful enough and shown in throughout the Clone Wars TV show that ran from 2008 to 2020 after delays, that Yoda was able to struggle a bit to catch it and deflect it, having to deflect it backwards and making it a little bit difficult for him to employ Tutaminis immediately. Dooku was able to utilize it during the arc of the Clone Wars, where Obi-Wan Kenobi disguised himself as Rako Hardeen against Anakin in the final episode of that arc, flinging him across the room like a rag doll, while smoke emanated from his body in thick white clouds. And it had also the ability to take down multiple people at once, as during the vision established by Palpatine in the final episode of Season 6 of the Clone Wars, where Palpatine attempted to break Master Yoda, we can see Dooku utilizing Force Lightning to incapacitate roughly 7 clone troopers simultaneously, leaving their smoking charred corpses seemingly rotting in death. And it could take down multiple people at once, a true testament to its power. It also had the ability to fling a full-grown human adult and move them across the room, leaving Anakin smoking and writhing in pain. It's powerful enough to outright kill other Force users, while not comparable to any other Force lightning in terms of the movies, like the Son, the Father, or even Darth Sidious, as they're in a whole different category to Dooku's own Force lightning. As we can see, Dooku's Force lightning is blue, widely considered to be the weakest of all the lightning colours, and the least potent. However, Dooku's mastery of the dark side meant that it was still reasonably powerful. I don't think we've ever seen him cause a person's skeleton to rip through their body or blow up ships like we have seen with Palpatine in legend and canon. But I don't see any reason to assume he would be beyond this ability if he had a few more years of mastery. He should certainly be able to do something he can do, since Rey was able to do that with accidental discharge, and based on displayed abilities and experience, as opposed to raw untapped power, he's far stronger than she is. Well, my friends, this is just my perception of how powerful Count Dooku's Force Lightning was. While it was much weaker than Sidious's Force Lightning, and far weaker than actual lightning, Yoda had zero difficulties handling the Force Lightning of Dooku's. However, Yoda was nearly overwhelmed using his Tutor against the Force Lightning that Sidious used. Not only is Sidious's Force Lightning powerful enough that Yoda doesn't offer him any protection, but you can actually see agony sprouting in Yoda's face as he was struggling to resist the onslaught of the dark side. Yoda was also able to use Force Lightning, and in my opinion, this actually meant he was more powerful at Dooku. As shown in The Last Jedi, he was able to use some form of elemental manipulation. While Dooku's Force Lightning was certainly potent throughout the Star Wars galaxy, it was not anywhere near the top contenders, like even Malgus or Starkiller. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video and quick breakdown on Dooku's Force Lightning? And I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. One quick disclaimer before I leave: be sure to like and subscribe and share the content around to your family and your friends if you know they are into die-hard Star Wars lore like I am, and I know you are. Goodbye, my friends, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Count Dooku, otherwise known as the tyrannical Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus, one of the main pioneers and orchestrators of the entirety of the Clone Wars conflict, was an 83-year-old Sith Lord who was the second apprentice of Darth Sidious, third if you're including the fallen Jedi Master Vergir from Legends continuity. Count Dooku is undisputedly one of the most famous and most popular Star Wars characters, especially with his resurgence in the Tales of the Jedi TV show that premiered just a few days ago. Tales of the Jedi really captured Dooku in a new perspective that many of us did not ever think to conceive him about. Any thoughts that we had of Dooku was as a cruel dictator and the leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, with Dooku largely acting as the main and primary face of the Clone Wars conflict. To the wider public scope, he was merely Count Dooku, a nobleman from the noble house of Sereno who was a former Jedi, who deduced it would be of his best interest to join the Separatists rather than the corrupt, politically advanced Republic, which was secretly under the control of his Sith Master. To the wider galaxy, Dooku was merely a politician, but to the Jedi, and some of the Jedi's most trusted confidants and agents, Dooku was so much more. Dooku was an agent of the darkness, and a very powerful agent at that. Dooku was considered by many, including his own master Sidious, and his grandfather Master Plagueis, as well as the majority of the Jedi Order, to be among the top 10 most powerful people that were alive during the prequel trilogy, possibly even emerging into the top 5. Dooku's saber skills were considered to the point he was possibly able to best Mace Windu twice in a duel. He had spent his entire life studying Makashi, the dueling-centric variation of lightsaber combat, which he mastered to the utmost extent, mastering it and becoming the true Makashi master beyond any other being that had ever existed in all of Star Wars lore. This to me was a true testimony to Dooku's immense power. His lightsaber skills were beyond immense, and Dooku's mastery over lightsaber combat meant he was able to deal and duel Mace Windu, Yoda, and even Darth Sidious, as well as Anakin and Obi-Wan simultaneously. Despite all these positivities and Dooku's immense dark side power, he was not indestructible. Dooku was widely considered to be an implacable member of the Sith Order and the main orchestrator of the Clone Wars. However, even the most powerful and politically formidable beings have their downfalls, and today we shall be exploring Dooku's greatest one. Well, my friends, let us proceed and explore why Count Dooku, in all his wisdom, and what was his most fatal weakness, and what eventually got him killed at the hands of his master and manipulation, Sheev Palpatine. With that out of the way, let us begin. Before we dive in, it is crucial that we know some very important facts about Count Dooku. To start off, Count Dooku was a Jedi for roughly 60 years, cementing himself as one of the most experienced beings to ever revolutionize the Order. Another incredible thing we need to know is his personality. He was an aging human male who had light skin, brown eyes, and white hair. Once a respected Jedi, and during the Separatist crisis, he was viewed as a political idealist by his former peers. During his time in the Order, Dooku chafed at a Jedi's disdain for technology. After meeting her, Dooku secretly kept in contact with his sister Jenza and grew close to her. His independent spirit helped push him away from the Jedi's Order. By the time he was a Sith Lord, Dooku had come to believe the Jedi had wasted their powers and that he had not squandered his own, believing he was more worthy of the Chosen One title than even Anakin. Dooku was considered as a charismatic statesman, deft at manipulation and deception. However, Dooku became increasingly delusional with the Galactic Senate's corruption and influence over the Jedi, and the arrogance and apparent complacency of the Jedi Order, eventually coming to desire the downfall of both institutions he's once served. After Sidious exploited Dooku's fury at the Republic to turn the Count to the dark side, with the final straw being the death of Qui-Gon Jinn and Master Yaddle, Dooku, having become the Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus, was a menacing, intelligent, powerful, manipulative, arrogant, and immoral yet charismatic statesman, with a refined and educated character befitting from an aristocrat of the last years of the Republic era. In public, he maintained the main image of a humanitarian leader who truly wanted what was best for the Confederacy, while in secret he looked for the greater powers as a Sith and the Force, and was willing to advance his plans with methods that included torture, assassination, and even genocide, despite Dooku's hesitancy to ever injure Sith or Jedi, with Dooku even swearing that he would not kill Jedi single-handedly, killing only 5 with the inclusion of Yaddle. Because the Order served the Republic, Dooku believed the Jedi were dishonored and not to be trusted, that they adhered more to the Senate and less to the will of the Force. Dooku also protested the failure of the Republic, bringing numerous systems to the Confederacy by exploiting their doubts and their faults, yet his true motives remained hidden. The Count truly wanted to rule a new Sith Empire at the side of Darth Sidious, whom he believed would bring the Order back to the galaxy. In the end, this was eventually what caused Dooku to die, and unveiled his main, primary, final weakness. Count Dooku, despite her pleas for him to return to the light, he was so committed to the dark side that he even had his own sister Jenza killed. Dooku was skilled at recruiting allies to his side throughout the entirety of the Clone Wars, obediently serving his master while dreaming of taking his place as the reigning Dark Lord of the Sith. Not only using his wealth, popularity, fame, and status as a nobleman of Serena, but also his natural charm and intense gravitas to lure systems into the seductive influence of the Separatists. Nevertheless, he was willing to betray his own followers and allies, such as Asajj Ventress and Pre Vizsla, when Palpatine eventually disposed of Ventress, ordering her execution. Though he showed some regret over endangering Ventress, angering his own master Sidious, he willingly betrayed and orchestrated the death of his former friend Sifo-Dyas as a Jedi. Dooku was very vindictive, as showed when he ordered devastating attacks against Mother Talzin and Hondo Ulnaka for crossing him in the path, proving that he did hold a grudge when people wronged him. Dooku was also quite fearless, like Anakin, his main rival, and was willing to sacrifice himself in a final attempt to fully convert his last apprentice, Quinlan Vos, to the dark side by tempting Vos to strike him down after he mortally wounded Vos's love of Ventress, an act that would eventually spiral into events that would lead to Ventress's death. Dooku, in the end, was willing to betray Sidious for power. Towards the end of the Clone Wars, he conspired with his new apprentice Quinlan Vos and Maul to attempt to overthrow Sidious. He had eventually orchestrated the same plans with Ventress and Savage Opress, before they in turn were disposed of for their various reasons. In the end, Dooku's main weakness, despite all his charismatic, manipulative strategies and tactical mind that made him one of the most formidable enemies that the Galactic Republic and the Senate had ever had to face, was eventually his own arrogance. Similar to Vader, Dooku did not believe he could be manipulated. He thought he was beyond those petty tricks, and never expected such a thing from his master. He in turn believed that his master Sidious would want him to rule alongside. He believed he was too valuable and too potent of a tool, the sharpest tool in the shed to be exact, to be disposed of. He full well knew that Anakin was going to jointly rule alongside them. However, he believed he would also be there, given a very big primary role in the new empire. He ultimately was so arrogant, he believed he was indisposable, and that he was beyond manipulation, thinking he would see any manipulative strategy a mile away, and believing any manipulative tactic would be pointless against him. However, he failed to understand that he was dealing with the best manipulator the galaxy had ever seen and ever would see. And he ultimately fell at the hands of his own master through the one thing and one tactic he thought he could never fall to. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Did you agree with my opinion of Dooku's biggest weakness and the ultimate reason he ultimately fell and he was ultimately beheaded by Anakin Skywalker at the age of 83 aboard the Invisible Hand? Goodbye, my friends, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
Yes, I've grown from a man to a god.
Hello my friends, and welcome back to the channel. I have been expecting you. Today will be a much shorter video than the usual lore dives we take into the sea of manuscripts, texts, holochromes that we unveil here on the channel. But nevertheless, I hope you enjoy it. Today we will be covering the Tales of the Jedi TV show, compiled of 6 shorts that releases on October 26th to our current knowledge. A trailer was released just today, which I've posted on my channel, and I highly recommend you check it out. This trailer of the Tales of the Jedi covers 2 aspects, with one covering Ahsoka's training under Anakin, displaying his brutality against the young Padawan Ahsoka, and the other one, and the far more interesting one in my opinion, showing Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn's training and showing how Dooku descended into the dark side, despite being the noble Jedi Master that many know him to be. But what skill was Dooku most proficient with, and how is he set apart from the remainder of all the beings in the galaxy in terms of this skill? How did he was able to be a master swordsman and a Jedi Master when he was a Padawan in a sword-faring duel? Today we will delve in to the skill that Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, demonstrated with his curved hilted blade. A man of formidable power that was exemplified tremendously by a Sith name he adopted under his tutelage of Darth Sidious of Darth Tyrannus. Dooku was a highly proficient skillful lightsaber duelist, even marrying into his old age. During his time as a Jedi, he was known as one of the Order's finest swordsmen, something I hope we get to see during the events of the Tales of the Jedi TV show. We also, in the trailer, got to see Dooku fighting briefly with Yaddle, the only other member of Yoda's species that was a Jedi, if we do not include Grogu's time as a Padawan. At the time of Revenge of the Sith, it was stated that Yoda was his only superior in the art of blade work, and Mace Windu was his only equal. On Geonosis, Dooku was able to effortlessly defeat both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, one immediately after the other, despite one being augmented by the love and hate he felt after losing Padme in the sands of Geonosis, and then go on to fight Grandmaster Yoda himself. This greatly shocked Sidious, as Sidious, his master, believed that he would have been able to defeat him and Yoda. However, he was less sure about the Grand Master, but now he possessed no doubts that if Dooku engaged him in swordplay, there was a very likely chance he could get lucky and put him on end. Dooku was able to contend with Yoda in the arena, but elected to retreat when he was unable to defeat the former Grand Master. He would often prove to be his equal and even superior to Skywalker and Kenobi, even as their skill was augmented during the events and conflicts of the Clone Wars, dueling Skywalker on several occasions, only toying with him per instructions by Palpatine, proving to be superior, until Skywalker, drawing upon the dark side, after the Count goaded him into its seductive influence, he was able to defeat the Count and overcome him. Among the most skilled swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen, Dooku was a practitioner of the second form of lightsaber combat, Makashi. Makashi was created around the time of the Second Great Schism, when the Dark Jedi rebelled against the Jedi Order, meant for dueling-centric combat. Makashi was designated especially for lightsaber-to-lightsaber duels. As such, it was considered obsolete in a time when most Jedi were more likely to face blaster-wielding opponents such as rogue clones, troopers, and bounty hunters. The style's rarity gave Dooku an unorthodox advantage when engaging in lightsaber confrontations with his fellow Jedi and peers, as a few of his enemies were trained to defend themselves against it. Makashi relied on most precision. Dooku mastered Makashi to such a degree he was considered the finest practitioner of the form ever, something we here on the channel firmly agree. Makashi relied on most precision, swiftness, and the economy of movement that this form incorporated, and Dooku's curved-hilt lightsaber was designed especially for the purpose of harnessing Makashi. He was also capable of effectively making up for his weaknesses with deflecting blaster bolts and fending against multiple opponents at once, as shown when he was able to duel both Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi on the Pike Syndicate capital world of Obadiah, during which he was able to defeat them by using their powers in the Force against them. Dooku was highly skilled in lightsaber combat, more skilled than Sidious, and possibly some would even say better than Mace Windu and Yoda. We believe while he is better than Mace Windu, we do not believe that he is as powerful and proficient in the art of blade work as the Grand Master. Well, Acolytes, tell us what you are most excited to see in the Tales of the Jedi TV show. I am certainly excited to see Count Dooku's story and slow descent into the dark side of the Force, and if he was able to duel Mace Windu, as the trailer highly suggested that the two will engage in a lightsaber confrontation, finally ending the decade-long debate over who is the more graceful and better swordsman. Goodbye, acolytes, and I'll see you in the next tale of the Jedi. Greetings, curious acolytes of the Force, students of this vast archives, and welcome back to the embrace of our knowledge or little archives. I have been expecting you. Today we shall be delving into two of the most powerful Jedi and Sith based on your interpretation of a Sith Lord of all time. Two of the most proficient blade masters among, in my opinion, the top 10 most proficient blade masters and lightsaber users in all of Star Wars lore, both of them surpassing even Darth Sidious, highly acclaimed, possessing many accolades to be not only the most powerful and formidable Sith Lord of all time, but also the greatest Sith Swordsmaster in history. In my opinion, these two swordmasters both best him in terms of lightsaber combat. These beings, originally Jedi, one of them eventually fell to the seductive allure of the dark side. And yes, acolytes, if you have selected this video to educate you on the duel between the pioneer of Vapad and the Makashi Master, you will obviously know this refers to the Count of Sereno, Count Dooku, and the champion of the Jedi Order, and the prophesied chosen one before the rise of Anakin Skywalker, Mace Windu, famous for his amethyst-coloured blade. Both of these beings possess immeasurable potency in the Force as well as tremendous skill in lightsaber combat, placing them as one of the greatest duelists both of their time and in all of galactic history, with Dooku and Mace Windu being stated of being on par with one another at the end of the Clone Wars galaxy-wide conflict. Today we shall be delving in, assessing and analysing their power. However, this greatly interprets and deducts based on your definition of power. You may think power lies within the Force and their tremendous skill and mastery over it. We shall delve into that argument. We shall also delve into the argument of their lightsaber skills and proficiency. I shall be supplying what I believe the most comprehensive and analysation easy versus duel between Count Dooku and Mace Windu. With that out of the way, acolytes, all you must do now is ascend to the rank of Master by striking down the subscribe button and fulfill your destiny. Good. With that out of the way, acolytes, let's begin. Beginning with Mace Windu. Mace Windu has dozen accolades, claiming him as one of the most powerful Jedi alive, and maybe the greatest swordmaster in the Order's entire history, with Obi-Wan Kenobi stating that Mace Windu's lightsaber skills were second only to Yoda during his time. Mace Windu described his form that he pioneered, called Vapad, a form of Form 7 lightsaber combat Juya that he had created to channel the dark side energies of his opponent through him, to the point where they essentially could fight forever, or Mace would be able to obtain the upper hand. Vapad is as aggressive as it is powerful, as its namesake, but its power comes at great risk. Immersion in Vapad opens a gaze that retains one in the darkness. To use Vapad, a Jedi must allow himself to enjoy the fight. He must give himself over to the thrill of battle, the rush of winning. Vapad is a path that leads through the prenebula of the dark side. This was Vapad's ultimate test. Mace Windu described Vapad as following. Having chosen the path of a Jedi Guardian, Mace Windu's training was mostly focused on mastering the art of lightsaber dueling, becoming an incredibly formidable and skilled warrior, and eventually considered to be one of the greatest swordsmen ever produced by the Jedi and Sith Orders, considered one of the greatest duelers in all of galactic history. And among the greatest in his time, he was considered second only to the venerable Grandmaster Yoda in skill among the Jedi Order, although Dooku had once bested him in a friendly duel, with accolades claiming that Dooku was his only equal in the art of lightsaber combat. During the Clone Wars, Windu was considered to be the only one who could stand toe-to-toe with his former friend Jedi Master and neutral ground, despite Dooku, now Darth Tyrannus, having improved and bolstered his abilities further from his training with Darth Sidious. Indeed, he had proved to be able to duel Tyrannus evenly, forcing the Sith Lord to resort to calling upon his Magdadards to temporarily hold off Windu. However, this could be due to the fact Windu was 20 years younger than an older Dooku, who was 83 at the time of his death on the Invisible Hand, and Windu was only 63. Alongside Obi-Wan Kenobi, Windu managed to defeat Tyrannus on Beth 4. Another display of Mace Windu's outstanding prowess in lightsaber combat was how he could overwhelm the droid cyborg General Grievous in single combat, a cyborg who had killed dozens of highly capable and esteemed Jedi in his time, and quickly overpower the assassin that was taught by Dooku Asajj Ventress in their first duel, though at the time he was going all out. He had held his own against an improved Ventress in their second encounter, even if they had been forced to end it prematurely by circumstantial and environmental factors. Though he stated that Depa Bilaba's blade work potentially surpassed his, and while she was even more formidable than she usually was, due to tapping into the depths of many of Car Vastor's guards, Windu was still able to hold her off, and eventually lure her into destroying the spaceport signal jammer in their ferociously intense duel. However, he clearly had put in great effort in fighting her, and was close to being defeated in this duel. Both combatants were severely hampered by physical weakness and fatigue that humans were subject to. Windu even had the capabilities to beat Sora Bulk in a lightsaber duel, despite his claims of having improved from having perfected Vapad with immersion within the dark side of the Force. Windu even managed to draw the power and augment his skill from the current Dark Lord of the Sith, and with further amplification of Anakin Skywalker's fear, was able to disarm Darth Sidious himself, one of the greatest Sith swordmasters in all of galactic history, a feat only replicated by Grandmasters Yoda, widely regarded as the greatest duelist of his time, boosted by the power of his family, Grandmaster Luke Skywalker in Legends continuity during the Dark Empire comic series. He acknowledged that they would have fought to draw if Windu had not used Shatterpoint. Furthermore, he never truly realized that he was drawing upon Anakin Skywalker's fear at the time, as the Revenge of the Sith novelization states. Known for having fully mastered all 7 conceivable combat forms at the time of the Clone Wars, mastering every sense and technique of lightsaber combat, alongside Sora Bulk, Windu developed the deadly form of combat known as Vapad, his most famous accolade and technique, the 7th form of combat, which completed to the Jedi the Juya form. Vapad was named after the predator native to the moons of Sarapin, which intentionally was created to allow him and those he trusted with the form to channel the inner darkness swirling invisibly within them, and also that of the enemy to use against them with this form. Mace Windu was essentially invulnerable in lightsaber dueling, and was able to essentially defeat any dark side user, as esteemed and shown and replicated when he was able to immerse himself fully, achieving true Vapad during his duel with Darth Sidious. Upon receiving further amplification from Anakin Skywalker's fear, Mace Windu was able to defeat the Dark Lord in single combat. Mace Windu was the only Jedi to fully master and completely perfect this style of Vapad, although Quinlan Vos could count as a close second to this title. The other 2 practitioners of this style, Sora Bulk and Depa Bilaba, were unable to master its intricacies and proficiency. Instead, it mastered them, driving them insane and leading them to the seductive allure of the dark side. When Windu went to Haran Kal in search of Depa, he displayed masterful skill in the Jarkai style of fighting, effectively adapting Vapad into dual-bladed combat. Although Windu primarily used Vapad, he at times also applied his mastery of the other forms to supplant his use of the form with aspects from other forms. Now, let's move on to his immeasurable Force talents. Known to be one of the greatest Force users in the Jedi Order that had ever produced, Mace Windu's mastery and power in the Force was incredible, being almost insatiable and inconceivable to the public eye. He was known for his resistance to the laws of the dark side, channeling his inner darkness into his attacks to help him serve the light side of the Force and the Jedi Order and the Republic he loved so dearly. This allowed him to utilize some of the darkest powers known to either Jedi or Sith without succumbing to the aggression that he felt, such as the terrible Force crush that he utilized on General Grievous during the original Clone Wars series that ran in the early 2000s. His mastery of the form he created, Vapad, also proved his devotion to the light, as the only other 2 advanced users, Depa Billaba and Sora Bulk, fell to the dark side. Master Windu was known to be able to ponder matters of the dark and light side of the Force with a clarity perhaps second only to Master Yoda during his time. Windu was known to only be highly proficient in using the Force to enhance the capabilities and augment the capabilities and abilities that his body possessed, and such was able to leap to great height and across enormous distances. On Haron Kal, he went toe-to-toe with Kar Vasta and demonstrated incredible force-enhanced speed and augmented acrobatics by landing 6 blows to the man's body before he could blink. However, for all his speed, he could not come to aid his fellow Jedi Masters in time, where Darth Sidious unleashed a horrific force scream and caught them off guard, making the first move. On Dantooine, having lost his lightsaber, Windu took to tearing super battle droids apart with his bare hands, using the Force to shield him, showing incredible Force strength and resilience as he crushed the armor of the Separatist droid legions and tore out circuitry with his fingers. Another incredible feat of his body and physical appearance, demonstrated during the Battle of Dantooine, was riding a landslide of rock and earth weighing hundreds of tons. Machines were his to manipulate with the Force. The Corran Jedi Master's abilities skills with telekinesis were so extensive and vast that during the Battle of Ryloth, he was capable of force pushing a huge ATTE walker off of a cliff with apparent ease. He also demonstrated the ability to simultaneously levitate 2 clone troopers with the Force and move them swiftly across the length of the bridge while they were struggling to regain their footing. He also ripped down a gigantic door in order to destroy a Separatist tank and associated infantry support. In addition, Windu proved able to release a torrent of Force energy from his hand, capable of blasting several battle droids backwards and powerful enough to destroy them on impact with the ground. The range of his force-thrown objects, such as B-2 battle droid, could reach almost 3 kilometers. He even telekinetically removed the bolts of a super battle droid during the Battle of Dantooine, allowing the droid to fall to pieces. He was immensely proficient in the application of the Force Wave ability, and used it to an incredible degree in his time during the Battle of Dantooine and Coruscant, blasting away and instantly destroying dozens of droids in a single kinetic blast from his hand. He was among a group of Jedi who used the ability known as Force Bellow, commonly associated with the dark side, and Darth Sidious was unable to tell if he personally used his power to haul away the Red Rovers and break open the door to Palpatine's office. The Jedi Master also demonstrated an affinity for using darker telekinetic powers, mostly associated with the Sith, such as Force Grip and Force Crush, the latter of which he used to severely injure the fearsome General Grievous in the Battle of Coruscant. Aiding Windu throughout his life was also his Shatterpoint ability. Shatterpoint, another ability used by Cade Skywalker, Darth Krayt, 2 of the finest practitioners of this ability, a power he always had a natural affinity for. It allowed him to perceive and see weak points in opponents, events, and everyday life, and pour Force energy into them, allowing him to break even lightsaber-resistant objects and objects that were nigh invulnerable to any other opponent. This power also allowed the Jedi to shatter otherwise unbreakable objects and see weaknesses in duels, such as when he was using this ability during his duel with Palpatine. Windu's Shatterpoint ability proved vital to his victory over the Dark Lord of the Sith, Sidious, but he had to realize too late that the Shatterpoint was Anakin Skywalker's and not Sidious's own. With that out of the way, let's delve into the powers and abilities of the Countess Sereno, the Makashi Master, Count Dooku, and see how he compares up to the champion of the Jedi Order. A powerful man, and a man of formidable power that was exemplified and punctuated by a Sith-adopted name of Tyrannus. Dooku was a highly skillful and proficient lightsaber duelist even in his old age, considered one of the most proficient and finest sword masters the galaxy had ever seen. During his time as a Jedi, he was known as one of the Order's finest swordsmen. It was said that Yoda was his only superior during the end of the Clone Wars, and Mace Windu was his only equal in the art of lightsaber fencing. On Geonosis, Dooku was able to effortlessly defeat both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. However, he noted after Anakin Skywalker was amped by the dark side of the Force due to the conflict he felt and love for his master, he was much more skillful, as it was stated in the Revenge of the Sith novelization. Dooku was able to contend with Yoda, but elected to retreat when he was unable to defeat his former master in combat, proving that Yoda's saber skills were more powerful and proficient than his own. He would often prove to be an equal and even superior to Skywalker and Kenobi, even as their skill augmented and bolstered during the Clone Wars, dueling Skywalker on several occasions, proving to be a superior in blade work, until Skywalker, with Dooku now tired of the Clone Wars due to his old age, and Skywalker was powerful enough, tapping into the dark side after Dooku was toying and pressing the source code of his emotions. Dipping into the dark side, he was powerful enough to overcome the Count. Among the most skilled swordsmen in the entire galaxy, and the galaxy had ever seen, Dooku was a practitioner of the second form of lightsaber combat, centric about lightsaber to lightsaber dueling, conversed and created around the time of the Second Great Schism, when the Jedi Order saw rebellion from a Junta Paul, and the conflicts such as the 100-Year Darkness broke out, where the Jedi finally had lightsaber-wielding combatants to face up against. Makashi was designed specifically for lightsaber-to-lightsaber duels. As such, it was considered obsolete in the time of the High Republic, where Dooku was trained, and when most Jedi were more likely to face a blaster-wielding opponent, like a bounty hunter or a mercenary. The style's rarity gave Dooku an advantage in combat when engaging in lightsaber duels, as few of his enemies were trained to defend themselves against it and counter it. Makashi relied on precision, swiftness, and the economy of the movement. Dooku implied that Makashi was a gentleman's way of fencing, and that the gem slow was sloppy and a quick and cheap way of using lightsaber combat, looking down on Anakin Skywalker's own choice of the gem so. And Dooku's curved hilt constructed lightsaber was designed especially for precision and economy of movement that Makashi specialized in. Dooku mastered Makashi greater than any other being had ever in the galaxy's history, to such a degree that he was considered the finest practitioner of the form to ever exist. He was also capable of effectively making up for its weaknesses, such as dueling multiple opponents simultaneously, and using it against multiple blaster-wielding opponents. With it being designed for lightsaber-centric duels, it was weaker against blaster fire, but Dooku, having mastered the form to its highest degree, was able to compensate for these weaknesses and even surpass them. In addition to his formidable and lightsaber skills during the Clone Wars, Dooku was very knowledgeable and skilled in the use of the Force. He demonstrated great power and strength in the use of telekinesis, believed to inherit the Jedi Order after the death of Grandmaster Yoda, if the need ever arose, during his duels with the Asajj Ventress and his escape from Hondo's pirates. He displayed immeasurable skill at using telekinesis in finer, more precise tasks than the likes of Darth Maul and Savage Opress, such as disarming Ventress, while also levitating her against the wall during her failed attempt to assassinate him with the likes of Savage Opress, her secret assassin. He was even capable of telekinetically manipulating people's motor skills and their minds, feeding off their anxiety and fear. Dooku had a calm demeanor and political influence, hailing from the noble house of Sereno, that served him better than Mace Windu and any lightsaber skills ever could. His political influence was on par with that of Darth Sidious, being born into the noble Sereno families and becoming a Count of his home world. He was not only a Jedi, a Sith, he was also a royal Count of Sereno, giving him tremendous political power and making him seem like a benevolent senator on the wrong side of the Clone Wars and Separatist conflict. He also employed skills and dark side techniques, such as when he force choked while simultaneously forcing Torque Falso to take out his blaster and shoot his comrade, while he performed a similar feat when he made Padme Amidala aim and shoot and kill Beck Louise. Dooku was highly skilled and proficient in the practice and dark side technique, considered to be its staple ability of Force Lightning, unleashing blue veins of lightning. While blue is considered to be one of the lesser variations and colours of Force Lightning, Dooku's proficiency in it was such he could make steam curl from Anakin Skywalker's hands and his entire body when inflicted. However, Dooku was unable to penetrate Yoda's Tutuminas. However, throughout the Clone Wars, Dooku would prove that he had the ability to incapacitate and subdue and enrage, albeit dark-side amped Anakin Skywalker during their duels, such as when in the Bounty Hunter arc, where Kenobi, disguised as Rhaegar Hardeen, infiltrates and attempts to stop and thwart a plan designed to kidnap the Supreme Chancellor. Dooku uses Force Lightning to subdue Anakin Skywalker and play with his emotions. Dooku used Force Lightning as both a means of torture and execution, similar to his master Darth Sidious, although his proficiency with this ability was nowhere near the rivalry of his master. Able to use it in conjunction with telekinesis, usually to send a person flying with his lightning or even to levitate his opponents while using his lightning on them, as he demonstrated on Ventress and 2 other Night Sister assassins, cloaked in invisibility, with Dooku's own blindness, believing them to be Jedi, cloaked by Mother Talzin, the most powerful Night Sister to ever live, and someone who was able to duel and contend with Darth Sidious pre-time skip during the Clone Wars, and at its pretty much peak before the rise of the Galactic Empire. A tremendous feat. Dooku, however, has been confirmed to be weaker than Talzin, as Dooku was nowhere near the skill of his master, and Talzin was able to contend with it. In my opinion, and from my deductions, Dooku possessed not only a greater political power due to being born in the noble house of Sereno than Mace Windu, but also having possessed a greater lightsaber mastery, but only just. Dooku completely dedicated his life, around 80 years of his existence, being able to best a Jedi Master when he was a mere Padawan in the light of lightsaber combat. Mace Windu can simply not compare to these accolades and feats. However, Mace Windu is still remarked as one of the Order's finest swordsmen, and considered the only one who could duel Dooku to a standstill without outright proving to be his superior, such as Yoda could, the Grand Master of the Order, at the time. So, in conclusion, who do I believe is the more powerful of these 2 Knights of the Order, and later a Dark Lord of the Sith? Well, in summing up, I believe that the more powerful being is Mace Windu. Mace Windu's ability to perceive shatter points would allow him in a duel to see the weaknesses and flaws in Makashi, such as dueling multiple opponents at once. It made him significantly weaker to Ataru, a form that Mace Windu had practiced and used in the past. Ataru was centric on dueling multiple opponents at once, employing high acrobatics. Another thing that Mace Windu was highly impressive with, augmenting his speed and skill to use acrobatics. Dooku's proficiency in the blade might have been better than Mace Windu's, but as we have seen on screen and in Legend continuity just far, Dooku was old and tired at the end of the Clone Wars, and while he was able to contend with Master Yoda, this simply isn't enough. Mace Windu's skill of the Pard allowed him to channel the Darksider's energy. This, combined with Dooku's age of 83 years old at the time of his death, Vapard being able to channel Dooku's dark side energy would make Mace Windu the unquestioned victor. However, it would be highly contested. In short, I believe that if these 2 met on a deserted battlefield, Dooku would only gain the edge if he happened to use Force Lightning and kill Mace Windu before he had the ability to fully immerse himself in Vapard. Otherwise, Mace Windu beats him 8 times out of 10. However, this is a very close debate. Well, with this final duel out of the way, comment down below who you want to see duel next. I know this is a highly speculated and contested debate on who is more proficient in and more powerful in lightsaber combat and the Force between these 2 former Knights of the Jedi Order, one dedicating his life to the Jedi and the other being trained by the most powerful Jedi and Sith of his age. Goodbye, Acolyte. Ascend to the rank of Master and strike down the subscribe button, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away.
I want only to bring peace and order to the galaxy.
Already so many have suffered for what you call order.
Then let me give you peace, Master Yaddle. Our time has come. For 300 years, we prepared, we grew stronger. While you rested in your cradle of power, believing your people were safe and protected. You were trusted to lead the Republic.
But you were deceived. As our powers of the dark side have blinded you. You assumed no force could challenge you. And now, finally, we have returned. You were deceived. And now your republic shall fall.
Count Dooku and Darth Malgus, two of the most legendary Sith Lords to ever be abducted into the Order, with Count Dooku coming around roughly 4,000 years before Malgus was death. Malgus was an exceptionally powerful Sith Lord, specializing in lightsaber combat. Malgus was a Sith warrior through and through, as well as Dooku, a noble Serenian noble who had had a 6-decade tenure as a Jedi Master, and then joined the Sith for over a decade, studying under the tutelage of Darth Sidious, one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, and aspiring to become the new public force and main public eye in the new Galactic Empire, being granted a role as prestigious and honourable as the newly christened Darth Vader. However, neither of these men got to experience their goals, while Darth Malgus wanted to achieve the rank of Sith Emperor, after he believed Vitiate had been killed by supposedly the hero of Tython during his millennia-long life, and Dooku wanted and aspired to become the head of the most powerful force in the galaxy and the reigning Dark Lord of the Sith. Neither men ever achieved their goals, with Malgus being named the False Emperor and Dooku being decapitated by Anakin Skywalker aboard the Invisible Hand before the concept of the Galactic Empire was even a dream to him. So, which one of these historical, powerful, and exceptionally skilled lightsaber duelists are the most powerful? Which one has staked their claim as the most powerful? And which one came closer to achieving their goals? Yes, my friends, welcome back to a new episode of our Versus series. This is Darth Malgus versus Count Dooku. A warning, there will be no hate in the comment section based on opinions. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and I am sure there are a multitude of people who will think that my answer is incorrect for varying reasons. This is just my perspective on things. And also, one of the rules and regulations is that we'll be only focusing on their powers and not how compelling their character arc is or how good of a character they would be. As I'm sure if you have stuck around on this channel, you definitely know who would win. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Let's start chronologically and emerge with Darth Malgus, Beginning with his lightsaber training, Malgus was hailed as the hero of Tython. The hero of Tython, widely regarded as the greatest Jedi of his age, and prophesied to defeat the Sith Emperor by Lord Scourge, the Emperor's Wrath, who was granted immortality alongside the Emperor, sharing in his immense power. The hero of Tython stated that Malgus' lightsaber form was flawless, with Malgus specializing in an overly extensively strong Djem-So, the most athletically taxing and the most demanding lightsaber form, even more than Ataru. With Ataru you just had to be quick, but with the Djem-So you had to be quick and strong. Malgus was an exceptionally talented duelist and among, or possibly even topping, the greatest lightsaber duelist of his entire age. And it was once stated and inscribed into ancient documents that Malgus once defeated Revan. That's right, my friends, the Revan himself, aboard a space station once during his crusade. He specialized in utilizing rage and brute strength to defeat his opponents. Aside from his overwhelming physical stature and strength, which he implemented and served him well not only in lightsaber duels, but also hand-to-hand combat, like when he employed it in the duel with Jace Malcolm during the Siege of Alderaan. Malgus also often performed acrobatics akin to Ataru, employing some elements of Ataru into his fighting style to increase his effectiveness in lightsaber combat. His speed was such that a normal human found it difficult to watch his movements in duels. A ferocious and terrifying Sith warrior with a horrific, nigh unopposed reputation, Darth Malgus relished engaging in combat on the front line, and specialized, like General Grievous and Darth Vader, in taking down Jedi. He was personally responsible for the death of 7 highly decorated and skilled Jedi Masters, such as Cal Kandaraj, the Jedi Battle Master at the time, and also Ven Zallo, who was a Jedi Master and widely considered Malgus' most famous kill. Malgus was shown to employ Jar-Kai in various situations and mastering it, such as during the retaking of Korriban, where we first saw him in the Old Republic game, where he employed this tactic and style to kill the Jedi Battle Master Cal Kandaraj, despite the latter's mastery in the same fighting style. Recent victory and impaling Malgus' own Sith Master Darth Vindican. Malgus' strength, rage, and clear focus in a lightsaber duel gave him an utter advantage that allowed him to brutalize opponents into submission, allowing him to swiftly deprive Cal of one of his lightsabers and finally save the Zabrak Jedi Master. Years later, during the sacking of Coruscant, widely regarded to be Malgus' most famous and highly decorated campaign, also marking the beginning of his disillusionment with the Sith Order, Malgus was able to fight against Ven Zallo and impale him in a short but ferocious duel. Zallo was often regarded as his most famous kill. Another brief example of this was shown during his fight against Padawan Sahar Katin, where Malgus utilized Jar-Kai after taking her master Denlam Orr's lightsaber, after slicing the latter through the chest. Even as he got older and began to get into his 60s and 70s, Malgus still remained a fierce duelist that managed to fight against both Masters and Padawans. Malgus' Djem-So tactic was such he was considered on par with Darth Bane. Darth Bane was widely considered to be the greatest specializer of the form ever, and among the greatest Sith Swordmasters in Sith history. Malgus was a master at Force augmentation, very similar to Darth Sidious, as Malgus utilized his pure rage. the Force Rage allowing him to bolster an aspect of his physical traits in order to overpower many Jedi in a lightsaber duel. Another example of this was he was able to successfully take over the Sith Empire after the supposed death of Emperor Vitiate, the emperor that Malgus adhered to so strictly. Malgus was able to duel Venzalo's former Padawan and come out on top. However, he did allow her to live due to the fact she allowed his lover, whose name is a Twi'lek slave, who conveniently was one of Malgus's slaves. Her name was Alina Daru, and due to the fact that she allowed her to live, Malgus decided it'd be best as a show of gratitude to let her go. Now, let's move on to Malgus's Force talents. Veridon's adoptive father, who was a biologist in Star Wars, stated that his instructors tell that they've seen few with his potential in the Force. Due to this quote alone, we can assume Malgus's Force capabilities were beyond the average Sith, with the average Sith being roughly having 10,000 midichlorians. I deduced Malgus roughly had 16,000. And Malgus utilised a variety and plethora of Force powers during the sacking of Coruscant to defeat a multitude of many Jedi and Republic soldiers who had the audacity to stand in his path, including saber throw, guiding it with telekinesis to impale multiple enemies, Force push, choke, jump, speed, and lightning, using lightning in order to tear through 2 Padawans and 1 Jedi Knight. Malgus utilised his emotions, such as anger and distaste of others, to fuel his power of the dark side, and demonstrated the skill and power to handle multiple opponents simultaneously with little to no effort, proving his superiority to Sith Lord Adras, his political rival. In one instance, Malgus unleashed a powerful torrent of Force lightning and killed 3 Jedi with it, incinerating their flesh. Malgus himself could tolerate Force lightning to a ridiculous extent. During his duel with Lord Adras, Malgus strode through the barrage of Force lightning from his opponent, using his lightsaber and fingers as a conduit, utilizing Tutaminis and redirecting it back towards his opponent to fling him from his feet. He perfected his application of Force lightning to such a degree, he was considered to be the second most powerful practitioner of the ability at the time, tied with Darth Revan, and considered to be inferior, however likely superior, with Vitiate. Vitiate considered to be the most powerful practitioner alongside Sidious in all of history. He perfected his application of lightning to a degree from which he could unleash a Force Maelstrom, which he demonstrated during the Battle of Lai Lung, a perfect application of Tutaminis when fired at either the Void Hound, Meteor, Hunter, or Cypher 9, absorbing the blaster fire with one hand. Force Maelstrom was utilizing telekinesis, shield bubble, levitation, and also the Force lightning ability itself, with Malgus generating a bubble, then rotating multiple enemies with telekinesis before unleashing a swirling storm of lightning from his hands to incinerate them. Malgus also performed Force screams to make his hatred apparent to those opponents, as well as destroy enemy fighters within his rage, blocking out eardrums and shattering columns. During his raid of the Jedi Temple, Malgus unleashed power with the expression of rage, which shattered a nearby column of a wall and sent a shower of stone shards throughout the room, when his friend Alina Daru was struck down by the most powerful opponent in the region, Zala, who Malgus considered the only one worth his attention. Malgus used this ability once again during his raid of the resting place of Adras, making his extreme hatred for him clearly visible by leaving a trail of destruction around him with it during his advance towards his powerful Sith rival. Malgus often implemented the Force speed ability to augment his physical acrobatics. When Malgus engaged Jedi Knight Aaron Lena in a duel, an observer attempted to watch them but could not properly deduce and see their movements because of their immense Force augmented speed. Later on, Malgus used his ability once again while he was rushing towards the hangar in a spaceport to rescue Alina Daru from a threat, leaving the troopers accompanying him far behind. Beings powerful in the Force, a midichlorian count estimated to be around 16,800 midichlorians per cell, surpassing even Mace Windu. Malgus was proficient in the application of telekinesis. Malgus could counter-push his opponents in midair while they would jump towards him and knock them out in the process. During the duel with Aaron, Malgus demonstrated this ability to hurl objects as missiles towards his opponent, and could perform Force Grip and Force Crush on his enemies. On Alderaan, a Zabrak Jedi used the Force to collapse 2 buildings on Malgus in an attempt to kill him. Malgus stood under the mountain of rubble composed of building parts made of durocrate and steel, preventing it from crushing him beneath with the Force. Malgus controlled his anger and sharpened his power. He blew the rubble up and away from him, sending it crashing in adjacent buildings. Malgus also performed Force Wave when he attempted to disperse a large crowd gathered outside a medical facility in Coruscant to check on Daru. The blast shoved anything away from him in all directions, and bodies slammed into each other, breaking walls and windows. The nearby transport lurched, and all the doors of the medical facility broke loose and fell to the ground. On Alderaan, Malgus also faced Jedi Master Satele Shan, his pure rival, in single combat, and tolerated heavy firepower and force powers from his opponents, which shattered large objects around him. He was seriously injured, but he survived and felt no pain. Malgus had also concealed his presence within the Force. Intriguingly, a Jedi in Alderaan utilized his ability to possess his Force signature when he planned to ambush Malgus, but it was ineffective against him. Malgus still managed to sense his presence and foiled his plans. Malgus was so strong on the Force that in the end, in the Old Republic's latest expansion editions, it took various Force users at one time to immobilize him on Elon. Now that we have properly deduced Darth Malgus's amazing and nigh unstoppable powers in the Force, let us truly decide who is the more powerful. And let's search, starting off with the Jedi Master, now Sith Lord, Count Dooku, and deduce his unrivaled power that was exemplified by a Sith aliases of Tyrannus. Dooku was a highly skilled lightsaber duelist even in his old age. During his tenure as a Jedi Master, he was known as one of the Order's finest and most experienced swordsmen. It was said that Yoda was his only superior by Revenge of the Sith, and that Mace Windu was his only equal in the art. On Geonosis, Dooku was able to fairly effortlessly defeat and best both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, one immediately after the other. Though he noted Anakin's dueling skills the second time they dueled were considering and progressing immensely, and then go on to fight Yoda himself. Dooku was able to contend with Yoda, but elected to retreat when he was unable to best his former master in the opening stages of the duel. He would often prove to be the equal and even superior to Skywalker and Kenobi, even as their skill evolved during the Clone Wars, and his skill decayed due to his old age. Dueling Skywalker on several occasions, proving to be his superior, merely toying with him, until Skywalker was powerful enough to eventually overcome the Count. It is revealed in the EU Legends continuity that Palpatine told Dooku to take it easy on Anakin throughout the Clone Wars, meaning the Dooku that we see the entirety of the time all across the Clone Wars TV show, Attack of the Clones, until the final stages of Revenge of the Sith, and the duel aboard the Invisible Hand, was merely taking it easy on Anakin, and he only died because he realized he had made a mistake and gone easy on him in that last duel, and he was at a stage in the duel where he could not go easy anymore. Among the most skilled swordsmen the galaxy had ever seen, Dooku was a practitioner of the second form of lightsaber combat, Makashi. Makashi was designed specifically for lightsaber-to-lightsaber duels, and was rendered useless and was considered obsolete in the High Republic, when Jedi were most likely to face a battalion of blaster-wielding mercenaries and opponents. The star's rarity gave Dooku an unusual advantage when engaging in lightsaber confrontations, as few of his enemies were seasonally trained to defend themselves against it. Makashi relied on the utmost precision, swiftness, economy of movement, grace, and elegance that matched Dooku's stature as a Serenian noble. Dooku's curved-hilt lightsaber was designed especially for this. Dooku mastered Makashi to such a degree he was considered the finest practitioner of the form ever, essentially becoming the Obi-Wan Kenobi for his own lightsaber form. He was also capable of effectively making up for his many weaknesses, with his weaknesses primarily being the fact he was weak against multiple lightsaber-wielding opponents, and was able to compensate for his lack of use against blaster-wielding foes. In addition to his formidable, nigh unopposed lightsaber skills, Dooku was also very knowledgeable and skilled in the use of the Force, despite having a relatively low midichlorian count for the Jedi High Council, considered to be roughly around 14,000, 2,000 less than Malgus, who I mentioned prior. He demonstrated exceptional prowess and strength in the field of telekinesis during his duels with Asajj Ventress and his escape from Hondo's pirate. He displayed a prowess of skill at using telekinesis in finer, more precise tasks, such as disarming Ventress like his teacher Yoda did in Season 1, Episode 1 of the Clone Wars, while also levitating her against the wall during her failed attempt to assassinate him with Savage Opress. He was even able to telekinetically manipulating people's motor skills, such as when he force choked while simultaneously forcing Turk Falso to take out his blaster and shoot his comrade, proving he could accomplish multiple force tasks at once. Dooku clearly proved to be the superior to Darth Maul, Palpatine's former apprentice, who was stated in the Clone Wars to be more powerful than Kenobi at that time. While he performed a similar feat when he made Padme Amidala aim and shoot at Beck Lois against her better judgment. Dooku was also highly skilled in the use of Force lightning, although in the movies and in the continuity he was one of the weakest practitioners of the ability, as he only specialized in the blue variation, using it as both a means of torture and execution, and was able to use it in conjunction with telekinesis, usually to send a person flying with his lightning, or to even levitate his opponents while using his lightning on them, like he did against Anakin Skywalker and Savage Opress, as he demonstrated on Ventress and 2 other Night Sister assassins, and a battalion of clone troopers multiple times. While Dooku was powerful in the usage of Force lightning, his usage of it cannot even compare to Malgus. Malgus' Force lightning mastery was among the greatest the galaxy had ever seen, and like I stated, he was considered to be third and only inferior in the ability of Force lightning to Vitiate and Darth Revan at the time. Vitiate and Darth Revan, however, are both titans of the Force, and 2 of the most powerful practitioners of this ability ever instilled into their respective orders. So, in the end, who do I truly believe is more powerful? The Serenian noble Count with his tenure as a Jedi, or the powerful, strong, formidable Sith warrior that is Darth Malgus, my favourite character in all of Star Wars? Warning, this answer will not be biased. So, I would like to present an analyzation of this video before I actually inform you of what my answer is. Starting off, I would like to inform you that Count Dooku is the superior in lightsaber combat, despite the fact that I think Malgus is among the top 10 best lightsaber duelists that ever lived, and even is superior to Palpatine in the art in terms of raw skill. I just cannot ignore the fact that Dooku's saber skills were considered to be superior or equal to Mace Windu, and only inferior to Yoda. He was even stated to be able to disarm Darth Sidious, one of the most powerful Sith Lords of all time, in a lightsaber duel, and made Sidious fearful and scared at his own lightsaber capabilities compared to his apprentice in Dooku's. Malgus' skill with a lightsaber, while formidable, ultimately is the perfect matchup in this match, since we will be taking Dooku in Attack of the Clones, his essential prime, and Malgus from the most recent Knights of the Old Republic and the Old Republic game adaptations. We shall be seeing that Dooku has the dark side, and Malgus is the most experienced and talented he has ever been. So, with these facts laid out, who's the better lightsaber combatant? Like I stated before, I believe it is Dooku, but I have to give the edge to Malgus as well. While I believe Dooku is a better duelist overall, due to Dooku's advanced age in Attack of the Clones of 79 years old, having been born in 102 BBY, over a century before the Battle of Yavin, and nearly a century before his death. Count Dooku's Makashi mastery allowed him to outduel nearly any opponent, including Mace Windu twice, and was able to duel with Yoda to a standstill. Despite this, Malgus' overwhelming physical strength that he employed in his lightsaber combatancy and altercations would ultimately prove to be the one thing that would let Dooku down. Dooku's old age meant that the Gemso was his weakness, and due to the fact Malgus was one of the finest practitioners of the form ever, I have to give this category to Malgus, although I do believe that overall Dooku is a better duelist. I just cannot ignore the fact that Malgus' Gemso mastery, considered to be one of the greatest in all of history, could not defeat Dooku's Makashi, which failed to generate kinetic energy and failed to generate momentum, which the Gemso specialized in. Also, due to Dooku's age, Malgus could quite easily launch a series of power strikes that could overwhelm Dooku, landing in possibly a swift strike that could wound the Jedi Master. There was also one point where Dooku was a Sith Lord, not a Jedi Master, and after he had rebelled against the Order, where he actually utilised his lightsaber in a more clumsy motion, actually shearing a portion of his skin off with his lightsaber blade during his duel aboard the Invisible Hand, as we can see portrayed in the Revenge of the Sith novelisation. Now let's move on to Force abilities. Personally, I also have to give this to Malgus. Malgus, who was an anti-hero essentially. Not good, but not bad. Was capable of utilising Force lightning in a plethora of ways. He was considered one of the greatest practitioners of the ability ever. Along with this, he could use Force augmentation to essentially fight forever, use telekinesis, and I highly believe that Malgus could effortlessly employ Force Maelstrom to defeat Dooku. So, with all these facts laid out on the table and our cards settled, I give you the ultimate victor is Darth Malgus. And I'd say that Darth Malgus was 9 times out of 10. The only way I could see Dooku possibly employing a tactic that could defeat Malgus is if he was capable of shearing through his armour, possibly getting lucky with one of his lightsaber strikes, or if Malgus got tunnel vision, or if Dooku utilised the Force to implement it into his surroundings and best Malgus. Other than that, there is no feasible way I can see the Count of Sereno, in his advanced age, despite being at his prime, defeating Darth Malgus in a lightsaber duel. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Do you agree with my pick and selection? And do you think that Darth Malgus is more powerful than Count Dooku, or the other way around? Be sure to share your opinions in the comment section down below, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Tales of the Jedi premiered just a few days ago, and we have already seen and been previewed to some of the greatest Star Wars lore content we have seen in the Disney era of Star Wars, premiering on the Disney Plus streaming service. Tales of the Jedi gave us 6 new shorts that each run for 15 minutes. Well, technically 12 to 18 minutes if we are being scientific and technological about it. In Tales of the Jedi, we can see the Ahsoka story arc and the Count Dooku story arc, with the wide breadth of the Star Wars community discussing the Dooku story arc as being superior to the Ahsoka, myself included, as I personally believe that as much as I love Ahsoka, as much as she is a compelling, formerly irritating character, Count Dooku is just up there with some of my favourite in all of fiction. His nobleness, and the way he conducts himself, like he is the majestic overlord of an entire war, similar to how he was orchestrating the Clone Wars along with his master Sidious. During the event of Tales of the Jedi, we get dealt with a bunch of blows that we actually do not know about. Some very intriguing plot points are hit on these multitude of episodes in the Dooku story arc, running for roughly an hour, technically 15 minutes in length. We can see Count Dooku in the last episode of his story arc committing some very heinous acts to the Jedi Order, proving he had already begun to descend down the very dark path he would one day attain to, after claiming his Sith moniker of Darth Tyrannus. So my friends, join us as we head into the works in our unverified transport, trail Jedi Master Yaddle as she surveys the actions of Count Dooku, scour the Jedi Temple's monitors and security cameras, and search through the archives database to uncover exactly what occurred right on the cusp of Dooku's anointing into apprenticeship under Sidious. One quick disclaimer before we proceed. If you're enjoying the daily Star Wars lore that we are posting on our archives and wish to continue presenting yourself on our channel, I implore you, share this video around to other Star Wars engulfed friends who will enjoy the lore I am about to present to you. Join us as we unveil another holocron and bring them along from the ride. Be sure to warn them that they will need their lightsaber, their raincoat, and their E11 blaster rifle. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Tales of the Jedi Episode 5 The Sith Lord opens in 32 BBY, the same year that not only Anakin commenced his Jedi training, but also the same year that Qui-Gon Jinn died at the hands of Darth Maul on Naboo. Dooku visits the Jedi Temple and secretly enters the Jedi Archives, normally monitored by Jocasta Nu, where he used Sifo Dyas, who was his best friend, authorization to erase secret data of the existence of Kamino. This is an increasingly incredible point in Star Wars lore, as Kamino was notably erased by Dooku. However, we have never really gotten an answer in canon since Disney took over as to how this occurred. And finally, we can see that information on Kamino was absent for almost a decade before Obi-Wan Kenobi went searching for it in the archives in Attack of the Clones. After doing so, he encounters a flustered Jocasta Nu, who informed him of his former Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn's encounter with a theorized and alleged Sith Lord. Dooku then spoke to Jinn and Yaddle, advising them to act with caution. Unbeknownst to them, this advice came from first-hand knowledge. When Maul was presumed dead following the invasion of Naboo, with his head being severed from his body and his being cut in half by Obi-Wan, Dooku briefly visited the temple once again prior to Jinn's own funeral, and informed Yaddle that he would not be attending due to the fact he held the Jedi Council accountable and was likely unwelcome. Dooku then travels to the Works to confront Sidious, the Works being the same place he would deliver the Death Star plans a decade later. Furious at his allies' machinations had resulted in the death of his former apprentice, one of the people he genuinely cared about in the entire galaxy. Yaddle deduces it is wise to trail Dooku, and decides to trail him, following him to the Work, sensing the spark of the dark side begin to ignite within the Jedi Master.
I know you are.
I'm afraid it is too late.
No.
After Sidious is openly challenged by Master Yaddle, the female member of Yoda's species and the only one we know in either canon or legends, Dooku accused Sidious of making him betray everything and everyone he had known. Sidious claimed that all of Dooku's actions had been in the service of a greater good and that the galaxy would be remade, and that his betrayal had been a necessary evil against the corrupt Republic and the Jedi that served them. Unbeknownst to Dooku at the time, Yaddle had pursued him in secret in a starfighter. After overhearing his secret conversation with Sidious, she confronted them and urged Dooku to surrender to her and help her defeat Sidious, surrendering back to the light side of the Force that Yaddle adhered to more than even Grandmaster Yoda. Dooku hesitantly initially, but then, on Sidious's orders, engaged Yaddle in a lightsaber duel as a final test of loyalty to his Sith Master. In spite of Yaddle's great effort towards the Sith, Dooku's nigh unrivaled dueling capabilities, rivaled only by Mace Windu, surpassing even his master Sidious, and inferior to only Yoda's, were able to best Yaddle's. Managing to hide behind Sidious's ship, Yaddle called out to Dooku, admitting that the Jedi Council had been wrong, and informing him that as a result she had chosen to step down from the body. Her last attempt at persuading Dooku failed, however, as he used the Force to shove away the ship that separated it. After another short exchange of lightsaber blows with Emerald and Sapphire blades colliding, Yaddle retreated to the doorway leading back to her ship. As Dooku mocked her for running back to her council and the Jedi that they were bound to, Yaddle retorted that he had run straight into the arms of evil. This last verbal assault angered Dooku, and he assaulted Yaddle with a greater ferocity than Makashi could muster. Eventually, Dooku knocked Yaddle into the frame of the large doorway, briefly incapacitating her and making her stutter, temporarily stunning the much smaller Jedi Master. Dooku wasted no time in proving his loyalty to Sidious, and flipped the lever controlling the Force using telekinesis, flipping the lever controlling the door using the Force, which immediately came crashing down onto his former friend as Yaddle held her hand up in a desperate attempt to use the Force to save her life. Collapsing in anguish and utter shock over what he had just done, and appalled by his actions, Dooku was reassured by his new master Sidious, who congratulated his new apprentice. To their utter shock, Yaddle suddenly reappeared, using her unfathomable connection to the light side and telekinetic prowess to lift the doorway off herself in one final display of her immense force power, which sapped her of her remaining energy. Lying defenseless and exhausted at Dooku's feet, Yaddle stated that many would suffer under Dooku's scheme for galactic order. Dooku replied sarcastically that he would give Yaddle peace, then impaled her with his lightsaber, killing her instantly with one swift, dueling-centric Makashi strike. Dooku, it should be noted in this moment, hates killing Jedi, and prefers to send clones or droids to do his bidding rather than kill them personally. To this date, we have only seen Dooku kill 5 Jedi in canon or legends, including the renowned Jedi Master Yaddle, which we saw in Tales of the Jedi. Count Dooku, also known as Darth Tyrannus, has recently made his resurgence in the Tales of the Jedi TV show, allowing us fans of Count Dooku and his character to take a deeper dive and descent into his darkness and how Count Dooku fell to the dark side. One of the most intriguing points I would like to touch on today about the dark side is the iconic Sith eyes that many dark side practitioners gain once they commit horrific acts. For example, Palpatine seems to have all his Sith eyes whenever he's conducting anything related to the Sith, like alchemy, reading through ancient talismans. He even has Sith eyes when he is christening Darth Vader as a new Dark Lord of the Sith. We also can see Darth Maul's Sith eyes on full display essentially throughout his entire life, as Darth Maul grew up without a concept or notion of what love essentially was, and grew up loveless, very similar to Tom Riddle, aka Voldemort from the Harry Potter series. Voldemort and Maul are very similar, with Maul growing up essentially an orphan, with Sidious as his adoptive essential father figure. Maul underwent brutal training and as a result almost permanently and perpetually had his yellow Sith eyes on display to the entire galaxy whenever he showed himself in those rare occasions. However, the character I would like to speak about today, Count Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, the second apprentice of Darth Sidious and the placeholder for his ultimate prize in the Chosen One, Anakin Skywalker, and why it seems that Dooku did not have yellow eyes in Star Wars. Is it because he's not a true Sith, or does he not give in to the dark side as much as other Sith Lords? All this information will be unveiled today as we scour the forbidden section of our archives and uncover truly why Count Dooku seems to lack the iconic yellow Sith eyes. Before we proceed, if you are enjoying the Count Dooku / Tales of the Jedi / Sith lore we are producing on the channel daily, and the Star Wars content, our archives keep getting updated, and due to our various researchers re-emerging on Coruscant for their planetary and galaxy-wide expeditions, be sure to use the Force to crush that subscribe button, lacerate the like button, and hit the notification bell to be notified for any latest updates into our archives. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Dooku doesn't have his yellow eyes because of one primary reason. And before we jump into that, we have to understand the personality and goals of Count Dooku and what he thought the Clone Wars would end. Count Dooku believed that he was too valuable to be discarded, ultimately leading to his death with Anakin aboard the Invisible Hand. Palpatine played him, and Dooku truly believed that he was beyond manipulation, with this being his greatest fault. He believed that his tenure as a Jedi, and now a Dark Lord of the Sith, had opened his mind to spot any manipulation, even from the greatest manipulator in Palpatine that the galaxy had ever seen, from a mile away, and he could thwart it and counterattack it effortlessly and easily, like many other Sith had. However, Dooku underestimated everyone. He underestimated his master and believed that he could spot his manipulation. However, in the end, Palpatine outwitted Dooku. It is ultimately why, if you have not seen that video that I have posted, Dooku did not expose Palpatine in Revenge of the Sith, and why, in the end, Dooku chose to remain silent rather than expose his master when Anakin had his own blade raised at Dooku's throat. Dooku was a charismatic idealist and leader of the Separatist forces and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. He led them throughout the Clone Wars, 4 brutal years of war that engulfed the galaxy. You have to understand that Dooku was 79 to 83 during the time of the Clone Wars, ultimately dying in 19 BBY at the age of 83, a testament to his immense power, as many Jedi and Sith don't normally die at such absurd ages, especially humans in terms of Dooku. Dooku wanted to give the Separatists security in their decisions. The Separatists most likely well knew that Dooku was a Force user, a well-known former Jedi, and was very wise, even because of Force users. Dooku had experience in both ranges, and had trained under 2 of the greatest masters of both the light and the dark in all of history, being Grandmaster Yoda and Darth Sidious, his own Sith Master. Ultimately, I believe that the reason Dooku does not have the malicious Sith eyes is due to his eyes reflect his belief. Believe it or not, Dooku was a fully fledged Sith Lord, having mastered the ways of the dark side to such an extent he was able to produce lethal Force lightning that could incapacitate Anakin Skywalker for an extended period of time. Dooku was also able to outduel Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu, twice, and Anakin Skywalker, although he was eventually killed by the latter after he believed that Anakin was inferior to him. Dooku's saber skills were truly beyond any in the entire galaxy, besides Yoda and Mace Windu, and some could even possibly and potentially say Anakin and Sidious, although many think Sidious's saber skills are only due to his Force speed and augmentation. He is one of the most proficient duelists in Star Wars history, definitely to be counted among the top 10, possibly even the top 5. However, his reason for joining the Sith Order was not a malicious and vengeful one, like Palpatine's was, or many other Sith, like Tenebrae or Marco Ragnos. The reason he joined Darth Sidious was because he believed the Jedi were becoming corrupt, adhering too much to the politics of the galaxy, and he believed they were losing their way, adhering more to the politics of the galaxy and the Senate, as he stated in Tales of the Jedi. How can the Jedi continue to evolve if we continue to say and take everything the Senate says as law? He believed the Jedi were losing their way, becoming too involved with politics and understanding the Force, and being guided by it, lacking their connection to the Force. Dooku was also heavily manipulated by Sidious little by little, chiseling away at his mental defenses until the breaking point was being shown was Qui-Gon's death, as we see in Tales of the Jedi. Dooku's final steps into darkness was Qui-Gon's death. Once he heard of it, he immediately went to the location that we would later see him present the Death Star plans to Sidious in Attack of the Clones. He went to this location on Coruscant, pursued by Jedi Master Yaddle. His final steps into the darkness and dancing into it was the death of Jedi Master Yaddle, who he decapitated with his lightsaber, cementing himself as Sidious's new apprentice. This turned him to the darkness and solidified his belief in a corrupt republic. Dooku did not have the typical Sith mindset either, because he repeatedly gave Obi-Wan hints at Sidious's plan early on in Geonosis, primarily when Obi-Wan was locked up. Another reason why Dooku did not have the traditional Sith yellow eyes was due to the fact he did not implement the dark side and employ its usage as much as Sidious, Maul, or Vader. They had the yellow Sith eyes that have become a staple in the Star Wars universe due to the fact they utilize the dark side every day, with Maul and Vader literally using it to pump through their veins and keep them going, with Sidious possibly being its most masterful and powerful practitioner ever besides the Force entities. Dooku did not practice it at all. While Dooku certainly was still a tremendous force on the battlefield, Dooku did not give in to the dark side like Palpatine did. He still had a concept for things and notions like love, caring, and passion. How he did not, unlike Sidious, reduce the dark side. He diminished its use, only employing it in fights such as the one with Grandmaster Yoda and Obi-Wan and Anakin and Mace Windu throughout the Clone Wars. Other than that, he just became the Senator and Count Dooku, as we know and love. Anyway, this is just my personal perspective. Many others might have different reasonings for why they believe Dooku might have a different opinion, or possibly was unique. Dooku, in my opinion, only was a Sith because he believed that the Jedi had become corrupt and lost their way, and that the Sith had to take over. That is, in my opinion, the only reason that Dooku joined the Sith in the first place, because the Jedi were becoming corrupt political adherents who did not follow the will of the Force anymore, and just adhered to everything the Senate said, taking it as absolute law. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Soon I will be uploading a lore compilation on Emperor Vitiate, so be sure to stick around for that. Goodbye, my friends, and I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. The climactic duel that culminates the beginning of the Republic's winnings over the Clone Wars conflict, and the fleeing of the Separatist leaders to Utapau, is fought aboard the Invisible Hand. The Invisible Hand being General Grievous's primary flagship for the remainder of the Clone Wars saga. After the destruction of the Malevolence, Grievous's main flagship during the events of the Clone Wars. During the event of this duel, we see Count Dooku, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker duel together for the final time. Dooku is currently 83 years old, a tremendous age, and has been noted by Palpatine as finally getting tired, and did not want to fight anymore, simply wanted to win the war, put an end to it, act swiftly. The dark side was beginning to fail Dooku. His old age, while it had granted him tremendous experience beyond almost any other being in the galaxy save for Yoda, it had also granted him the mortal fatigue, age, and ailing physical ability that ultimately culminated in Count Dooku's death. So, here is something that intrigues me. Why didn't Anakin, when he had the twin lightsabers, one being the crimson curved blade of Count Dooku, and the sapphire blue blade of his own making, did not expose Palpatine? Why didn't Dooku not scream out to Palpatine, tell Anakin and Obi-Wan that Palpatine was the Sith? Why did Dooku deduce it was more imploring to remain quiet? And wait, why did Dooku not expose Palpatine, where Palpatine was obviously ushering Anakin to kill him now? The clear statement that he utters in the Revenge of the Sith. Well, my friends, greetings and welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you, and today we shall be exploring just that, dusting off and exploring the ruins of the Invisible Hand, on the depths of Coruscant and in the regions of the core worlds. We shall be picking up the historic relics of Dooku and Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber, interviewing security guards, and analysing the memory banks of battle droids and security cameras who are on guard during this historic duel that began the fall of the Separatists and the Republic's beginning the winning of the Clone Wars conflict. Are you ready, my friend? Let us proceed. As he looks up into the eyes of Anakin Skywalker for the final time, Count Dooku knows that he has been deceived, not just today, but for many, many years, that he has never been the true apprentice, that he has never been the heir to the power of the Sith. He has only been a tool. His whole life, all his victories, all his struggles, all his heritage, all his principles and his sacrifices, everything he's done, everything he owns, everything he's been, all his dreams and grand visions for the future empire and the army of the Sith, have only been a pathetic sham, because all of them, all of him, add up to only this. He has existed only for this. To be the victim of Anakin Skywalker's first cold-blooded murder. First, but not, he knows, the last. The following monologue I have recited from the Revenge of the Sith novelization from Matthew Stover, from pages 81 to 82, where Anakin holds Dooku's and his own lightsaber at the Count's chest. Dooku was aware, alright, the second before Anakin severed and decapitated the Count and ended his life. Palpatine had orchestrated the stage, acting as a puppet master. Dooku was just too intelligent, too noble. He did not believe that Palpatine, or anyone, could ever manipulate him, and it ultimately led him to his death. He had convinced Dooku it was just another act in the play, Grievous kidnapping the Supreme Chancellor and holding him captive aboard the Invisible Hand. The Jedi eventually coming to his rescue, and Dooku meeting them, eventually, after giving them a good duel, surrendering and being taken captive, able thereafter to negotiate an end to the war with the Supreme Chancellor, allowing the CIS, standing for the Confederated Independent Systems, a victory they could not claim on the battlefield. It was, as the book notes, a trap, but the Jedi were not the targets of the trap, but the bait. Dooku was the target, a piece on the board that has been valuable to Palpatine, a bishop, or possibly even a castle. However, he was just a piece to be moved around, and now Palpatine needed that piece to be removed. He was the counterpoint to Grievous, controlled, refined, powerful, reasonable, and negotiable. Once Palpatine removed him from play, he could push the Senate to grant him further powers. The powers needed to stop the dangerous and brutal rampage of Grievous across the systems, who would prosecute aggressive war unrestrained by the more intelligent Dooku. Of course, the genius of it all was Dooku did not know he was a pawn to be sacrificed. He simply was too arrogant, too overconfident. He believed that his tenure as a Jedi Master, 60 years of Jedi training, 6 decades under the tutelage of the wisest masters, and becoming one of the greats of the Jedi, as believed by many, including Yoda, Ki-Adi-Mundi, and Mace Windu. Dooku believed it was impossible for him to be manipulated. He believed that nobody could stop him. He eventually believed that he, Sidious, and now a reformed Anakin would be given an important spot in the new empire. However, he was deceived. Dooku believed he did not know he was a pawn. He believed he was a bishop, and he did not see it until the very end. He saw himself as a major piece, one that would shatter the board and the game if removed. He hadn't realized that Palpatine was only using him as a pawn to get to Anakin. Slowly, as you can see over the course of the Clone Wars, not only does Dooku's age, weariness, and fatigue begin to settle in, but Anakin becomes growing stronger, testing the Count's every limit, and rarely besting him, if at all, during the entirety of the Clone Wars. Anakin is inferior to Dooku, until finally, Dooku steps over the line. Anakin unlocks the untethered and unlocked abilities of the dark side, and the ferocity he had wanted to tap into so long. He had to push the war the way he wanted it to go. Treachery was the way of the Sith. Dooku forgot this, but was nonetheless a victim to it. Dooku believed he was too intelligent, far too seasoned. He believed that in the end, he would be given a pivotal role as the leader and conductor of a new Sith army in the new empire, which was why he stayed silent. He only realized, roughly 2 seconds before Palpatine ordered Anakin to kill him, and only 2 seconds before Anakin made his first move, an unremovable piece into the depths of the dark side on the board, by severing the Count's head, his lidless eyes staring up at him. As Anakin stared down, his cold-blooded murder was finished. Dooku started to speak. He only began to muster the words, thinking of what he might say. His entire life had culminated in this moment, but then he was dead. He was about to say something as the Revenge of the Sith portrays, but before he could even utter a sound, he was betrayed by Sidious. He was sized off by Anakin, and the Count of Sereno, the wisest, most implacable, and the leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, was outmatched. He believed he was irreplaceable, a piece that could not be replaced, a piece along the board that was too pivotal, too important, to ever be considered being rid of. He believed he would become an entity such as Sidious, and would help train the young Skywalker Anakin in the ways of the dark side. However, he was wrong. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? Did you believe that Dooku was a good explanation? Did you believe what I believe? And did you read the Revenge of the Sith novelization by Matthew Stover that paves this out clearly? If you have not, I highly suggest it. The Revenge of the Sith novelization is one of the best Star Wars books I have ever read, and truly is exceptional to its purpose. Now, pay your respects to the Count of Sereno as we escort him back to his tomb on Sereno, his homeworld. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. Be sure to visit Dooku in the Netherworld after you become an entity of the Force. And I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to our archives. Inside the vast databanks of our temple, I have been expecting you. I hope you have decided to enroll yourself in our academy due to the reputation we have amassed from our previous students, with them going on to become famous Jedi, Sith, and acolytes of the Force that truly show the esteem of what being a Force user is. Today, my friends, we are going to be discussing about a rather mysterious, cryptic, and enigmatic character from the sequel trilogy, and personally, one of my favourite characters in all of Star Wars, and my favourite character from the sequel era. Yes, my friends, I'm speaking about Supreme Leader Snoke. Supreme Leader Snoke was hailed as the Supreme Leader of the First Order. The First Order taking up the officers and their descendants from the remnants of the Galactic Empire after its destruction in 4 ABY by hands of Luke Skywalker and Lando Calrissian respectively, with Luke Skywalker taking out the heads in Vader and Palpatine, and Lando Calrissian destroying the main base of operations, being the Death Star. Supreme Leader Snoke was a Strand cast clone made, crafted, and formed on Exegol, an ancient Sith holy world steeped in the dark side. Snoke was genetically manufactured on Exegol by Palpatine and his Sith Eternal cultures many years prior to the outbreak of Clone Wars, with Snoke having been alive during the Clone Wars and old enough to have an attained memory of events such as the Clone Wars, the Galactic Empire's reigning fall. As in an interview, he was stated by Andy Serkis to know essentially everything and be aware of past events, meaning his age is somewhere between 70, possibly a bit younger, years old. Throughout Snoke's many depictions throughout the sequel trilogy and in a few comics depicting Kylo Ren's descent into darkness, we can see that Snoke has attained a multitude of injuries, with his face being malformed, disfigured, and deformed. We can see that Snoke has a multitude of scars from his warrior lifestyle, and due to the fact his body has begun to fail him. Many of the Star Wars community and its content creators have assumed that this was just Snoke and his ailing body that comes with old age due to being a clone. However, this is actually not the case. Today, I shall be discussing an excerpt from the Last Jedi, the Visual Dictionary. The Visual Dictionary having a section and a page depicting Snoke and discussing his injuries, going into full detail about them. Now, my friends, let us proceed, delving into the secret halls of the Supreme Leader, and delving in and stealing information and coveted data from the First Order archivist. Now, my friends, let us begin. The excerpt from the Visual Dictionary of Star Wars The Last Jedi depicts Snoke's injuries. It goes as follows. Though his name is known to the galaxy, and his reputation as the Supreme Leader of the First Order precedes him, few have ever actually seen Snoke in the flesh. He obscures himself with distance, being forever unreachable, save for a select few who can contact him directly. Even under such circumstances, Snoke disguises his true nature. Whatever frailties have broken his body are dwarfed by the immense size at which he typically projects his form. Snoke is powerful in the dark side of the Force, but he is no Sith. That 1,000-year lineage stretching from Darth Bane to the last Sith Lord Darth Vader was undone when Vader died, destroying his mentor Darth Sidious. The fulfillment of an ancient prophecy foretold the end of the Sith, but it never predicted the end of darkness. The following excerpt goes on to depict, describe, and authorize Snoke's wounds, going as following. Snoke's famous head scar, the line that is drawn in an odd question mark curving formation through his head and skull, was actually theorized to be a wound dealt by Luke Skywalker in a duel, or at least the majority of his frailties are, as Snoke has been stated to have dueled Luke Skywalker once before. While neither seemed to get the upper hand, it appeared as if Luke won the duel, and Snoke was forced, with a plethora of new injuries to deal with. This scar is known as a hypertrophic scar channel. Another famous wound, and possibly even more famous than this albeit, is the sunken-in cheek that Snoke has on his left cheek, or right cheek based on your perspective. His sunken-in cheek has lattices and pieces of skin tissue, very and increasingly frail and old, looking almost rotten and tanned, and also incredibly decaying. In the medical world, there is actually a scientific name for Snoke's wound here. This wound is currently known as malformed zygoma. Malformed zygoma is where a patch of skin falls in, starts to decay exceedingly fast, which is a full breakdown of Snoke's wounds. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? This was a short compilation of Snoke's most crucial and vital wounds. What did you think of this? Be sure to drop any video ideas you have down below in the description and comment section below. Be sure to use the Force and your lightsaber to lacerate the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on, and utilize Force Lightning to shock the like button into submission. Goodbye, my friends. I bid you farewell, and I hope you are not on the receiving end of one of the Supreme Leader's brutal, torturous punishments. As a young protege of the Order, Mace Windu admired the sincerity, the grace, and the unfathomable power that was commanded by the Makashi Master in Count Dooku. Dooku was claimed to be the greatest lightsaber duelist in the entire Order, possibly with the exception of only Yoda. However, many debated that Dooku's skills even exceeded the wrath of the Grand Master at his full potential, something Windu genuinely aspired to. This is why, when Dooku left the Jedi Order, seemingly without consent, and seemingly on the spot after the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and he believed that the Jedi were corrupt influences who served the Republic more than they adhered to the will of the Force, something that greatly enraged him. Windu did not believe it. He thought that it was inconceivable that a man such as Dooku, who he considered to be one of the greats of the Jedi Order, up there with legendary Grand Master Yoda and some of the fatal Jedi Masters of old, could leave the Jedi Order on such short notice, seemingly without any reason whatsoever. While this was a gunning blow into the heart of Mace Windu, who was roughly 2 decades younger than Dooku, as Dooku was 83 at the time of his death aboard the Invisible Hand, and Mace Windu was only 63 at the time he was electrocuted and thrown through the streets of Coruscant by Palpatine's sincere and ferocious Force lightning. Dooku was considered by many and hailed to be the greatest sword master of the Jedi, and that had ever been produced by them, considered equally or more skilled than Mace Windu when tapping into the fullest extent of his own style in Vaapad. This made Dooku an incredibly feared man, and greatly admired throughout the Jedi Creed when he adhered to the Jedi Code and the will of the Force in the light. This is why, when Mace Windu received covert intelligence revealing that Dooku had been the one around and surprised and being the head of the entirety of the conflict, beginning and planting the seeds of doubt and war in the galaxy, Mace Windu did not believe it. He did not want to believe it. This was a man that he had grown up idolizing, and now Dooku had become the very thing the Jedi sought to destroy, a Sith. However, this was not to Mace's knowledge as of yet. Mace Windu only began to sense the seeds of the dark side planted within Dooku's vast mind and political influence when he entered the catacombs on Geonosis, using his Shatterpoint ability to perceive weak points, and that allowed him to perceive weak points and pour energy into them, or use them in lightsaber dueling, a tactic he often employed using Vaapad when he was fighting non-dark side beings. This made Windu very strict and very, very careful. Dooku was far more experienced than the 63-year-old Jedi Master, and Dooku was not to be underestimated. His skills had not waned. The dark side had just given him an extra boost of power that made him unfathomably powerful, something that Mace Windu could not allow to intimidate him. Mace Windu then went on to describe, after seeing Dooku and seeing the seeds of the dark side that had been planted carefully within him through a decade of manipulation, that he was the center of the ensuing conflict. Mace Windu received a vision, an apparition of the coming war as his form of a shadow point. The Shatterpoint showed him a vision of the oncoming war of the Clone Wars, and the conflict that the Jedi were condemned to engage in for the good of the wider galaxy against the Separatist droid legions. This greatly shook Mace Windu, as Dooku, as he realised after receiving the Shatterpoint, was at the head of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, as Darth Sidious was not revealed to the Galaxy Jedi Order at this time, at least not publicly announced. Mace Windu believed truly that Dooku was the most dangerous Sith and man, and most powerful politically, and possibly in the Force as well, that the galaxy ever knew. Of course, this was before the discovery of legendary Sith Lord Darth Sidious, and his secret aliases as Emperor Sheev Palpatine, now Supreme Chancellor Sheev Palpatine of the Republic. Well, my friends, Mace Windu truly, in my opinion, believed Dooku was the most dangerous and powerful man in the entire galaxy. He believed that the galaxy was in a current state of webbing, like a spider, and Dooku was the one in the center, holding everything together. Mace Windu perceived that if he was to kill Dooku at that critical moment on Geonosis, where he confronted his old friend and held his amethyst blade towards the neck of legendary bounty hunter Jango Fett, then the war would end. The conflict that would take over millions of worlds would seemingly dissipate as quickly as it had surfaced. In the end, it was all down to Mace Windu, but he was outwitted, and Dooku was made to escape. In the end, Dooku eventually was killed. However, this was well after the discovery of Darth Sidious as the supreme master of the Sith and the reigning manipulator of the entirety of the Clone Wars conflict. So this is truly why Mace Windu believed truly in his heart that Dooku was the most dangerous Sith to ever live, and the most powerful man in the galaxy, both politically and possibly in the Force due to his new dark side power, something that greatly shook Windu. Well, my friends, what did you think of this video? I hope you have enjoyed opening this holocron that was stored within the databanks in the catacombs of Geonosis. Goodbye, my friends. I bid you farewell. Be sure to check in with our Geonosian archivist in the Jedi Temple, and be sure to alert any Jedi Temple guards if you find any dark presences lurking within our archives. Goodbye, my friends. This is where we part ways. Be sure to stay out of the Forbidden Archive section, and be sure not to violate any rules of the Jedi Code. And away we go, into the galaxy far, far away. In Star Wars, fights between the Jedi and the Sith, beings and swordmasters such as Mace Windu and Count Dooku are all about the matchup. Obi-Wan's Sarisu style was a saber form that focused on a tight and impervious defense, where the lightsaber moved very slightly so as to expand little energy parrying, counter-thrusting, and rip-sitting. Greetings, acolytes of the Force, and welcome back to our archives. I have been expecting you. And I'm here to pose a question for us to examine and analyse today. Why could Anakin beat Dooku, but Obi-Wan could beat Anakin, when Obi-Wan was beaten by Dooku twice over the course of the Clone Wars, and many, many more times? Beaten twice in the movies, and beaten many more times in the animated Clone Wars TV show. In conclusion, the goal was to have superior stamina and patience so that when your opponent started tiring out or getting frustrated by your impervious defense, the same tactic Obi-Wan employed against General Grievous, you could take advantage of a dip in their technique and their fault, expose openings and finish them. Mace Windu stated that Obi-Wan is not just a master of Sarisu, he was the master of Sarisu, and the finest practitioner of the form ever, making him one of the most powerful Jedi, including Mace Yoda, Kip Duron, and Kyle Katarn. Anakin's form is named Gem So, and it's basically a power-oriented and strong form. It is the most physically demanding of all the lightsaber forms, even above a Taru. With a Taru, you just have to be quick and acrobatic. With the Gem So, you have to be quick and strong. It is extremely skilled and also capable of a good defense. As a great quote reminded me of the Gem So, the best defense is a good offense. Anakin's primary play is to apply constant offense as an opponent, enhance his own strength through power of the Force augmentation, and batter through his opponent's defenses, and crush them into submission effortlessly. When he becomes powerful and skilled enough, like when he was amped with the dark side against Dooku in Revenge of the Sith, who, by the way, was much weaker than in Attack of the Clones, due to the fact that Dooku had tired and was sick of the Clone Wars conflict. It worked like a charm, because although Dooku is probably in the top 3 duelists in canon, and in the top 10 in Star Wars Legends in terms of pure skill, Yoda, Sidious, Mace Windu and Dooku being his only rivals in canon. His form, named Makashi, relies primarily on thrusts, counterattacks and footwork. The grace of Dooku's lightsaber proficiency was akin to that of a dancer moving throughout the dance floor. Think of a fencer, or think we're talking about fantasy fencing. Wesley from The Princess Bride, an incredible movie and book. Perfect skilled maneuvering of the blade and foot to fence out the opponent. The only weakness in this form is it lacks power and momentum. Against 99% of swordsmen, Dooku wouldn't be troubled. Anakin, as this is the chosen one, that is one person who could smash through his skilled techniques and batter him down, and that's exactly what he did in Revenge of the Sith. The main issue with Dooku's style was that it couldn't generate momentum, whereas that was what Dejem so specialised in. And probably the other kicker to Dooku's form was the fact that he was extremely old. He was 83 times the time he finally confronted and engaged in an altercation with Anakin and Obi-Wan aboard the Invisible Hand in 19 BB Light. 83 years old is an impressive feat to be able to keep up with Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, and the Master of Surisu in Obi-Wan Kenobi. Dooku was far beyond his physical prime, and most likely, if it had been in his physical prime, like we most likely will see a portion of in the Tales of the Jedi TV show airing October 26th, Dooku would have been able to absolutely hammer down Anakin due to his superior blade work. There was a bit of foreshadowing of Anakin battering down Dooku's defenses throughout the Clone Wars animated TV show as well. Anakin on his own put up a number of good fights against Dooku alongside Obi-Wan, and even had him on the ground choking him in one episode, until Dooku unleashed a torrent of Force lightning that briefly incapacitated the Chosen One. And this is the last point. Dooku only beat Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith because he used the Force. Dooku at the point was still a bit stronger in the Force than Obi-Wan, due to his 1,000 or more higher midichlorian count. And I would say noticeably more skilled due to his tenure as a seasoned Jedi Master and Sith apprentice as Darth Tyrannus. He was able to Force push him to the ground first, and then use Force grip to throw him into a platform, and immobilize him with the platform in a second attack after Force choking him. When Dooku fought Kenobi on Geonosis, he was basically toying with him, since Obi-Wan was using the fighting style known as the Taro, due to the fact that Dooku had trained Qui-Gon Jinn, who had then trained Obi-Wan Kenobi as his third apprentice. Qui-Gon specialised in the Taro, and Obi-Wan was still employing that same strategy before switching to Surisu, meaning that Dooku knew exactly what moves he was going to make every time before Obi-Wan even knew what he was going to do, and before he even knew what he was going to make. Ataru focuses on offensive and acrobatic flips, just like how Yoda masters it and all the basic techniques of it. Obi-Wan learnt this form from Master Qui-Gon Jinn. If you pay attention to the fight in The Phantom Menace against Darth Maul, you'll see Obi-Wan does a number of flips over Darth Maul. This form doesn't really suit him after he became a Jedi Master to Anakin, because he became much more conservative, cautious, patient, and awaiting in his approach to fighting, which essentially nurtured the strengths of Ataru, and made it easy for Dooku to toy with him, also due to the fact he had trained his master, and knew the form in which Kenobi was replicating off by heart. By the time of the Revenge of the Sith, though, Dooku was in big trouble when he realised Obi-Wan had become a master of Surisu in the middle of their duel, while Dooku was unquestionably a better duelist than Obi-Wan even in his weakened state in Revenge of the Sith. At the start of the fight against Dooku, Obi-Wan faked Dooku out by engaging first in Ataru. This lured Dooku to a false sense of security because he knew all the weaknesses and faults of the form and Obi-Wan's application of it. Midway through the fight, Obi-Wan suddenly changed to Surisu and parried a number of thrusts that Dooku thought were going to end the fight. Dooku became very, very cautious and conservative. However, he quickly overcame it, because he realised that with Anakin's offense, he was going to be on the back foot the entire time due to his age, and with Obi-Wan's defense, he was up against a wall, basically getting crossed between a rock and a hard place whilst the Count of Sereno. This is why he resorted to using the Force to shatter Obi-Wan's Force barrier, and to get Obi-Wan out of the fight, as Darth Sidious had briefed him earlier, stating that they needed to kill Obi-Wan, as Obi-Wan was the one thing keeping Anakin hooked to the light side of the Force. and with that, Anakin could become a part of their new galactic empire. Using the Force, he force-choked him and incapacitated him, at which point he assumed he'd control the fight against Anakin alone. This speculation, however, was wrong, as it's very possible that if Dooku were to fight Obi-Wan alone at the time of Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan's unbreakable defense, while in my opinion would not match up to Dooku, would surely give him a formidable fight, and would make him at least try partially. However, in the end, I believe Dooku would win 9 times out of 10, possibly even 10 times out of 10. The only way that Obi-Wan could beat Dooku in Revenge of the Sith is if Dooku made a mistake in his fencing technique, and Obi-Wan exploited it using Sarisu. Using sabers only, though, I think it is unlikely that Dooku would ever lose to Obi-Wan. So why did Obi-Wan beat Anakin? Obi-Wan had incredible stamina, patience, and reliance on his lightsaber form, stayed within his limits and played to his strengths, and didn't take any big risks, unlike Anakin, who was happy to give the high ground and back up and let Anakin drive himself back, unlike Anakin, and just keep his concentration on not making any mistakes, unlike Anakin. He eventually got the high ground, which in turn was its own fighting style, which I will make an in-depth video about later on. Anakin thought he could pull it off, and impaled his master through the back, which in the Revenge of the Sith game adaptation, he actually succeeded in. He warned Anakin not to continue and pursue the fight, but being ego-driven to this point and arrogance blinding him through the dark side, Anakin believed he could pull it off. He made a fatal and critical mistake, left himself open in that flip slash, in which Obi-Wan was himself very experienced in. It was how he beat Darth Maul after all. Anakin had studied the duel between Maul and Obi-Wan many years prior and knew that this strategy could possibly overwhelm Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan took advantage, however, of the opening and sliced him to pieces. This was Sarisu at its finest, a mix of offense and defense. Obi-Wan won not just because he got lucky, but because he was the master of Sarisu, developing such impenetrable defenses that even Anakin's power strikes couldn't batter them down, and took advantage of the one mistake Anakin made during the fight, giving him the victory, and making the Chosen One maimed, scarred, and brutalized. Well, my friends, what did you think of this explanation? Dooku is unquestionably a better swordsman than both Anakin and Obi-Wan in his prime, and could very well be in the conversation of the top 3 best swordsmen if we are considering Legends continuity at his peak of physical strength. Most likely we will see in the Tales of the Jedi TV show, airing later this month. I am very excited to see the Tales of the Jedi TV show, and more specifically the Count Dooku segment of it. Dooku was one of my favourite duelists in all of Star Wars, a cold, calculating, and manipulative political figure from the noble house of Serenno. Dooku checks all the boxes of a Star Wars character I truly admire. Dooku was a master of fencing, and Christopher Lee, the actor that portrays Dooku, R.I.P., was also a master fencer in real life. Goodbye, acolytes. I'll see you in a galaxy far, far away. And be sure to master your own lightsaber form before going up against the Master of Sarisu and the dark side bolstered Chosen One. Tales of the Jedi premiered just a few days ago, and we have already seen and been previewed to some of the greatest Star Wars lore content we have seen in the Disney era of Star Wars, premiering on the Disney Plus streaming service. Tales of the Jedi gave us 6 new shorts that each run for 15 minutes. Well, technically 12 to 18 minutes if we are being scientific and technological about it. In Tales of the Jedi, we can see the Ahsoka story arc and the Count Dooku story arc, with the wide breadth of the Star Wars community discussing the Dooku story arc as being superior to the Ahsoka, myself included, as I personally believe that as much as I love Ahsoka, as much as she is a compelling, formerly irritating character, Count Dooku is just up there with some of my favourite in all of fiction. His nobleness, and the way he conducts himself, like he is the majestic overlord of an entire war, similar to how he was orchestrating the Clone Wars along with his master Sidious. During the event of Tales of the Jedi, we get dealt with a bunch of blows that we actually do not know about. Some very intriguing plot points are hit on these multitude of episodes in the Dooku story arc, running for roughly an hour, technically 15 minutes in length. We can see Count Dooku in the last episode of his story arc committing some very heinous acts to the Jedi Order, proving he had already begun to descend down the very dark path he would one day attain to, after claiming his Sith moniker of Dark Tyrannus. So my friends, join us as we head into the works in our unverified transport, trail Jedi Master Yaddle as she surveys the actions of Count Dooku, scour the Jedi Temple's monitors and security cameras, and search through the archives database to uncover exactly what occurred right on the cusp of Dooku's anointing into apprenticeship under Sidious. One quick disclaimer before we proceed. If you're enjoying the daily Star Wars lore that we are posting on our archives and wish to continue presenting yourself on our channel, I implore you, share this video around to other Star Wars engulfed friends who will enjoy the lore I am about to present to you. Join us as we unveil another holocron and bring them along from the ride. Be sure to warn them that they will need their lightsaber, their raincoat, and their E11 blaster rifle. Now, my friends, let us proceed. Tales of the Jedi Episode 5, The Sith Lord, opens in 32 BBY, the same year that not only Anakin commenced his Jedi training, but also the same year that Qui-Gon Jinn died at the hands of Darth Maul on Naboo. Dooku visits the Jedi Temple and secretly enters the Jedi archives, normally monitored by Jocasta Nu, where he used Sifo Dyas, who was his best friend, authorization to erase secret data of the existence of Kamino. This is an increasingly incredible point in Star Wars lore, as Kamino was notably erased by Dooku. However, we have never really gotten an answer in canon since Disney took over as to how this occurred. And finally, we can see that information on Kamino was absent for almost a decade before Obi-Wan Kenobi went searching for it in the archives in Attack of the Clones. After doing so, he encounters a flustered Jocasta Nu, who informed him of his former Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn's encounter with a theorized and alleged Sith Lord. Dooku then spoke to Jinn and Yaddle, advising them to act with caution. Unbeknownst to them, this advice came from first-hand knowledge. When Maul was presumed dead following the invasion of Naboo, with his head being severed from his body and his being cut in half by Obi-Wan, Dooku briefly visited the temple once again prior to Jinn's own funeral, and informed Yaddle that he would not be attending due to the fact he held the Jedi Council accountable and was likely unwelcome. Dooku then travels to the Works to confront Sidious. The Works being the same place he would deliver the Death Star plans a decade later. Furious at his allies' machinations had resulted in the death of his former apprentice, one of the people he genuinely cared about in the entire galaxy. Yaddle deduces it is wise to trail Dooku, and decides to trail him, following him to the work, sensing the spark of the dark side begin to ignite within the Jedi Master.
I know you are.
I'm afraid it is too late.
After Sidious is openly challenged by Master Yaddle, the female member of Yoda's species and the only one we know in either canon or legends, Dooku accused Sidious of making him betray everything and everyone he had known. Sidious claimed that all of Dooku's actions had been in the service of a greater good and that the galaxy would be remade, and that his betrayal had been a necessary evil against the corrupt Republic and the Jedi that served them. Unbeknownst to Dooku at the time, Yaddle had pursued him in secret in a starfighter. After overhearing his secret conversation with Sidious, she confronted them and urged Dooku to surrender to her and help her defeat Sidious, surrendering back to the light side of the Force that Yaddle adhered to more than even Grandmaster Yoda. Dooku hesitantly initially, but then, on Sidious's orders, engaged Yaddle in a lightsaber duel as a final test of loyalty to his Sith Master. In spite of Yaddle's great effort towards the Sith, Dooku's nigh unrivaled dueling capabilities, rivaled only by Mace Windu, surpassing even his master Sidious, and inferior to only Yoda's, were able to best Yaddle's. Managing to hide behind Sidious's ship, Yaddle called out to Dooku, admitting that the Jedi Council had been wrong and informing him that as a result she had chosen to step down from the body. Her last attempt at persuading Dooku failed, however, as he used the Force to shove away the ship that separated it. After another short exchange of lightsaber blows with Emerald and Sapphire blades colliding, Yaddle retreated to the doorway leading back to her ship. As Dooku mocked her for running back to her council and the Jedi that they were bound to, Yaddle retorted that he had run straight into the arms of evil. This last verbal assault angered Dooku, and he assaulted Yaddle with a greater ferocity than Makashi could muster. Eventually, Dooku knocked Yaddle into the frame of the large doorway, briefly incapacitating her and making her stutter, temporarily stunning the much smaller Jedi Master. Dooku wasted no time in proving his loyalty to Sidious, and flipped the lever controlling the Force using telekinesis, flipping the lever controlling the door using the Force, which immediately came crashing down onto his former friend as Yaddle held her hand up in a desperate attempt to use the Force to save her life. Collapsing in anguish and utter shock over what he had just done, and appalled by his actions, Dooku was reassured by his new master Sidious, who congratulated his new apprentice. To their utter shock, Yaddle suddenly reappeared, using her unfathomable connection to the light side and telekinetic prowess to lift the doorway off herself in one final display of her immense Force power, which sapped her of her remaining energy. Lying defenseless and exhausted at Dooku's feet, Yaddle stated that many would suffer under Dooku's scheme for galactic order. Dooku replied sarcastically that he would give Yaddle peace, then impaled her with his lightsaber, killing her instantly with one swift, dueling-centric Makashi strike. Dooku, it should be noted in this moment, hates killing Jedi, and prefers to send clones or droids to do his bidding rather than kill them personally. To this date, we have only seen Dooku kill 5 Jedi in canon or legends, including the renowned Jedi Master Yaddle, which we saw in Tales of the Jedi.